Yo, what is up guys, Stillboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick preview and prediction for John Ryder versus Daniel Jacobs. This fight goes down this weekend, in specific on the 12th of February, and honestly it's a fight I'm really looking forward to. Quite frankly, you would have to describe this fight as a crossroads fight in the super middleweight division. Considering where both guys are at in their careers, a defeat here would really rule them out of world level, so winning here is paramount. There's a lot on the line. I think stylistically it's an interesting clash of styles, and yeah, given where both guys are at in their careers, I think this is a really interesting fight, and one I'm really looking forward to. Now, let's briefly break down the tale of the tape. John Ryder has a record of 30 wins, 5 defeats, 0 draws, 17 of his 30 wins coming by way of knockout, whereas Danny Jacobs has a record of 37 wins, 3 defeats, 0 draws, 30 of his 37 wins coming by way of knockout. John Ryder is listed as 5'9" with a 72-inch reach, whereas Daniel Jacobs is listed as 5'11" with a 73-inch reach, so Danny Jacobs is 2 inches taller, and he also has a 1-inch reach advantage, so Daniel Jacobs is the taller, longer man, and I expect him to try and utilise that on fight night. John Ryder is 33 years old, whereas Danny Jacobs is 35 years old. John Ryder is a southpaw, interestingly enough, and Danny Jacobs is orthodox. Now the tale of the tape is out of the way, let's briefly break down what I believe each guy should do to stand the best chance of winning, and at the end of this video I will make my official prediction. I guess we'll start with John Ryder, who I'm assuming going into this fight is the underdog. Now John Ryder traditionally is a pressure fighter. John Ryder, of course, is a southpaw, and he's got a very educated lead hand. First and foremost, his jab is pretty effective. He can vary that jab from body to head, and he feints that jab extremely well also out of that southpaw stance, and I expect him to use that in this fight. I think it's going to be paramount against the longer, taller man who can box and move. I expect John Ryder in this fight to be the pressure fighter, and I would expect John Ryder to utilise that jab while applying pressure. John Ryder in recent times has kind of developed into a crafty pressure fighter. He has some really good subtleties to his game, as I was mentioning, in particular with his lead hand, and he really needs to utilise that in this fight to chase down Danny Jacobs, apply pressure, and cut the ring off. I want to see John Ryder approach this fight similar to how he approached the Callum Smith fight, and in that fight he was kind of fighting out of a crouch. A nice tight guard, he was really kind of feinting and probing with the lead hand, wasn't really committing, and then all of a sudden he would throw like an up jab from a crouched position, which really kind of disrupted Callum Smith's construct, which at that point John Ryder did a really good job of quickly closing the distance and then working away at Callum Smith. I think he needs to adopt a similar game plan in this fight. John Ryder disguises that jab extremely well. Because he's got that active lead hand, he will throw feints, and because he fights in that crouch, that jab coming upwards is really hard to read at times, and on top of that he's got very little tell in that shot. He doesn't really telegraph it, you don't know when it's coming, so I want to see that shot from John Ryder in this fight, and on top of that, of course, vary that jab from body to head. Try to keep Daniel Jacobs guessing, mix in those feints, and keep that front foot momentum. Try to utilise that jab to keep Danny Jacobs off balance, to manoeuvre him into stationary positions, whether that be on the ropes or in the corner. And once you're in that position, use that foot speed, which John Ryder does have. He does have pretty good foot speed. Use that foot speed to close the distance and then work. I wouldn't recommend staying in the pocket too long with Danny Jacobs. I think John Ryder is a better inside fighter, but Danny Jacobs does have a really snappy uppercut, which he can hurt you with. So I would say once you close that distance, don't stay in the pocket for too long, land a 2 or 3 punch combination, and at that point, basically just get out, let Danny Jacobs escape, and then resume your pressure. Again, John Ryder, in my opinion, he is a better inside fighter than Danny Jacobs, but Danny Jacobs can uncork some power on that uppercut, so John Ryder definitely needs to be aware of that shot, in particular given his stance, given his defensive structure. He is kind of hunched over and open for that shot, and that's another thing, don't follow Danny around in straight lines, because if you're following Danny around in straight lines, he can easily time that uppercut as you're coming in, and I certainly think Danny has the power to hurt John Ryder, and who knows, maybe even potentially stop him. So he can't afford to be following around Danny Jacobs in straight lines. He needs to keep that nice tight guard, which he can do, and work behind that jab, and really pick your moments to work and keep on making Daniel Jacobs reset, making him feel the pressure and fight your fight. And on top of that, of course, he needs to be working Daniel Jacobs' body. Daniel Jacobs does have good legs. He can move when he wants to. So that body work of John Ryder will definitely be paramount in this fight. Once again, John Ryder is a pretty proficient body puncher. He does it pretty well. So I'd expect John Ryder to really go down to that body as well on Daniel Jacobs to try and reduce that movement, to try and reduce those reflexes, reduce that punching power. I think the body work of John Ryder will be extremely important in this fight. In fact, I would go as far as saying if he can't mount a successful body attack, I think John Ryder would have a hard time winning this fight. So the body work of John Ryder is extremely important. And the last thing in regards to John Ryder, sometimes he has the habit of kind of getting lulled into a low output type of fight. He kind of has the habit of sometimes fighting his opponent's type of fight. But in this fight, he can't afford to do that. He needs to keep that work rate to a good level. He needs to keep active, and he needs to keep his hands moving. But yeah, I mean, John Ryder in this fight, we know what he has to do. I can't see John outboxing Danny from the outside. I think Danny is too quick on his feet. I think his hands are too quick. He's longer. And all in all, I just think Daniel Jacobs, is a much better outboxer than John Ryder. So John needs to be the pressure guy, and he needs to do what he did in that Callum Smith fight and replicate that in this fight with Danny Jacobs. I know Danny Jacobs has much quicker feet than Callum Smith. He's a much better mover. But John Ryder also has quick feet. I think he can catch up and keep up with Daniel Jacobs if he's applying that sort of pressure. So yeah, I think the strategy for John Ryder is quite straightforward, as it is for Daniel Jacobs, in my opinion. As far as I'm concerned, Daniel needs to keep this fight long and keep John Ryder at arm's length. As effective as John Ryder's jab is, he primarily relies on timing to get that shot off, especially when he's fighting a taller guy, a longer guy. He relies on timing, so he'll kind of fight out of that crouch, slip your punch, and then he'll come in underneath you and throw that up jab. That's essentially what John Ryder's best weapon is that up jab. That's what he primarily does, and after that he'll close the distance and work away. So in this fight, I think, Daniel Jacobs really needs to keep this fight at arm's length. I think primarily he needs to be boxing off a back foot, off his jab, and essentially try to keep John Ryder at arm's length and essentially point score. Having said that, he is fighting away from home. He's fighting in England. He's fighting in John Ryder's hometown of London, I believe. So, again, Danny needs to be boxing. He can't afford to give up real estate and give up the distance to John Ryder, but Danny still needs to be relatively proactive in there and utilise that right hand of his. Of course, John Ryder is a southpaw, and as they say, the straight right hand is the southpaw killer. And one thing about John Ryder, although he does keep a tight guard, his lead hand, his right hand, primarily is a little bit lower than his left hand. So I think the straight right hand from distance could work as John Ryder is advancing. And I think Daniel Jacobs definitely needs to step into that shot on occasion to get John Ryder's respect. And as I mentioned earlier on, You know, the uppercut for Daniel Jacobs in this fight could be extremely key, considering John Ryder is a guy who likes to fight out of a crouch, and he maintains that posture pretty well. He maintains that construct pretty well, but at times, as he's getting a bit over eager, sometimes his head will go beyond his front foot, and he is a little open for uppercuts through the middle. So I think that's a shot that Daniel Jacobs definitely needs to be looking at in this fight. There's definitely a possibility that Daniel can walk John into one of those sort of uppercuts and maybe even hurt him, or at least stop him in his tracks, because as we know, Daniel Jacobs is a snappy puncher. He does have good speed on his punches, and yeah, despite him being at 168 now, I think he's got enough pop to hurt John Ryder. Bear in mind, John Ryder also started at middleweight. So basically this fight is a battle of two middleweights who are just campaigning at 168. So, you know, Daniel Jacobs' power at 168, it might not translate to the big 168 pounders, but I think it will be a factor in this fight against John Ryder. So yeah, primarily Danny needs to be boxing a safety first fight, but not too safety first, not to the extent where you could be considered running and potentially maybe giving away rounds to the hometown guy who's applying pressure. Daniel needs to be countering effectively. He needs to be utilising that right hand in particular to really keep John Ryder in his place, and who knows, maybe even hurt John and walk him into a big shot. And yeah, I mean, I think the strategy for Daniel Jacobs is quite straightforward, as it is for John Ryder. Danny Jacobs needs to be the boxer and merge it with a boxer puncher style. You know, look for that hard right hand, the straight right hand, the uppercuts, counter punches. Whereas John needs to be the guy applying pressure. You know, out of that crouched stance. Maybe try to, you know, if you're John Ryder, try to draw the lead of Daniel Jacobs. Try to get Daniel to hold his feet, throw a jab, throw a straight right hand, slip underneath, come underneath, and work away. I think the strategy for both guys is pretty obvious in this fight. And yeah, I think stylistically it is an interesting fight. I really do. And again, considering where both guys are at in their careers, it's a must win. Whoever loses this fight has a long way back. Quite frankly, I think if Daniel Jacobs loses, he will retire, and maybe even John Ryder as well. So winning here is paramount. It's a must-win fight for both guys, and I always like those sort of fights. But enough of my jibber-jabbering. Who do I believe is going to win this fight? And I have to be honest, I made this video just, obviously, I'm making this video, and I've never had a certain pick in my mind who wins this fight. I do believe this fight goes to points. I don't believe either guy's getting knocked out. If anybody does get knocked out, I think it will be John Ryder. But even that I believe is unlikely. I think it's going to go to points. And I'm going to go with what I'm saying is the safe bet. I'm going to say Daniel Jacobs on a razor close points win. I'm going to say Daniel Jacobs on points. Close points win for Daniel Jacobs. I think it's a winnable fight for John Ryder. We have to consider Daniel Jacobs hasn't looked good at 168, but I'm just making this prediction assuming that Daniel Jacobs is going to be a little better than we've seen recently. So I'm going to say Daniel Jacobs in a competitive points win, but I'm really not confident in that pick, to be honest. I can see this fight going either way. The only outcome I can't really see is Daniel Jacobs getting knocked out. That's what I can't see. But who knows? Boxing's a crazy sport. John Ryder does carry power, you know, both in his left hand and his right hand, particularly that lead right hook of his. So who knows? Maybe Danny can get knocked out. But yeah, I'm going to go Daniel Jacobs on points in a close fight. But what about you guys? How do you see this fight playing out? Are you picking John Ryder or are you picking Daniel Jacobs? And tell me how each guy wins this fight. If you're picking John Ryder, tell me how. If you're picking Daniel Jacobs, tell me how. Share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.